On Get Started with Sage Executive Dashboard with presenter Jeff Bezetzner. Just a couple of housekeeping items before we get started. Everyone is in listen-only mode, so if you do have questions, please type them into the questions box on the screen and we'll address them at the end of the session. This webinar will be recorded and we will email a copy out to everyone within a few days. I will now turn it over to you, Jeff.
Thank you, Krista. Morning, everyone. Today we're going to be doing Getting Started with Executive Dashboard. And we're going to cover key components to get started. Today's agenda is going to be covering what is the Executive Dashboard. We'll move into some of the requirements. Actually, we'll get into the requirements of Executive Dashboard. We'll talk about a key component called the SQL Gateway. From there, I'm actually going to move into the gateway so you can see actually what it is and what it does. We'll talk about the installation. And then actually, we'll actually get into the Executive Dashboard. So what is it? It's really a reporting tool that allows us to see company financial statement, company financial information in a snapshot view. What the Executive Dashboard allows us to do is it takes a replica of your Sage 300 data and we'll put it into what's known as a SQL warehouse, and the Executive Dashboard allows us to report off of that. And this is just a sample screenshot. I'll get more into the dashboard in a future screen. So we'll talk about some of the requirements. The four requirements are you need at least to be on Sage 300. This should say version 13.1 revision 5 or higher. So let me just repeat that. The requirements, you need to be at least on Sage 300 version 13.1 revision 5 or higher. You're also going to need to download the SQL Gateway, which I'll demonstrate that in a little bit. You'll need to download the Sage Executive Dashboard, so these are separate installations. And then you'll either need to, when you download the Gateway, it also comes with a component of SQL Express. Now, one thing you need to keep in mind that if your data folders are more than 10 gig, you will need a full version of SQL. And I will show you that in a little bit. So this is just a screenshot of the gateway and the program that needs to be installed. And talking about what the SQL Gateway, I'll talk more about what it does, and then we'll get into the actual Gateway Administrator. So the Gateway is used to actually make a copy of your Sage 300 database. And what it will do is it will put it into what's known as a data warehouse where the Executive Dashboard can access it. This is where we can define settings in the gateway where we can set up a scheduled time to automatically do that replication, transfer the data into a modern or classic view, and I'll show you that when we go into the gateway, and I'll explain that. Then add the data source. So really what adding the data source is hooking into the data folders that you're currently using in your environment. And what we'll also be able to do is set the security, define the users, the roles, and the features that they have available to under their login. The other thing we need to do in here is actually define the SQL logon, and we'll need a SQL Server instance. And you'll need to know the name of your server and the SQL Gateway. That's the naming convention that you'll need to put in as a default. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to close out of the PowerPoint. I'll get back into it so you can kind of see what I'm referring to. So once you install it, where you'd end up finding the SQL gateways, you'll have new menu options in Start, All Programs, and under your Sage, you'll see new folders for the Executive Dashboard and the Gateway. Now, for the sake of our lunch and learn, just to save some time, I actually set up shortcuts on my laptop. So I'm going to go into the Gateway utility. and you'll see that it needs a SQL Server instance. That's my server name and the gateway, and I'll need to log on. So this needs to be set up behind the scenes. And in here, you have the ability to, set up your warehouses or add one. You can check the statuses. You can check the statuses of your replication. As you can see that had a late night last night. You can see that I did my replication last night after midnight. It's not uncommon for those I've worked with. Here's where I can list my data sources. There's options here, and here's where you can define the options for your warehouse when you want to set up the replication. Now, one thing I would certainly recommend that if you're having the system set up the replication, you want to do it at off hours. The default is 3 o'clock. You definitely want to do it when people, of course, aren't in the system. It's 2 different views. Gives you the ability to, it's 2 different views. One of the views consolidates transaction files. So for those that are more familiar with this terminology, when you hear in the Sage 300 world, the current file and history file, you can set up replications of these different types of databases. Any notifications that you want to define, you can set up options in here and configure it. I don't have mine set up, but you need to set this up if you want to have notifications sent to the person that's managing this process. And then you have the ability to set up the security, which you'll set up your users. You'll define the roles of what that you'll have access to and any features. Now, where it is today, the templates that you have access to, right where it is today, the templates that you have access to, there's only a limited selection at this point. And if I want to set up the replication, if I had to do it manually, I can hit the replicate now and it will start the process. I'm not going to let it run through. I did it late last night, but this is the status log that you would receive at the end of the exercise. Let me close this. You go back into the PowerPoint. Bear with me. So once we've defined the administration, let's talk about the installation. So a typical installation is you put it on your Sage 300 accounting server. The other component that we'll need is the executive dashboard. So keep in mind the gateway and the executive dashboard are 2 different installs. And what the add-on is basically the bridge between the gateway and the dashboard program. If you also will need to download the SQL Server. Now, the component of when you download the SQL with the dashboard, it comes with SQL Server Express as a default. But again, you're going to need to check the size of your data folder because you will need a full version of SQL if it exceeds more than 10 gigs. What I would strongly recommend is, because there's configurations that you got to get into SQL, as someone having an advanced knowledge of your network. It's a strong recommendation. And there's other types of configurations that they talk about in the guide that if it's something that's outside the normal, the typical installation. So there's a server component. There's also a workstation component. And really, in order for the workstation component, it's really for anyone that wants to use it. The nice thing about it is the workstation doesn't actually need to have Sage 300 installed. So for those users that are just planning to run reports, you don't necessarily need to have the Sage 300 to access those reports. You can do it from the executive dashboard. The prerequisites of the executive dashboard, well, obviously the server and the workstation needs to have the instance of SQL installed. We'll need to have the data replicated, and then you need to have access to the gateway. So security's got to be set up. And then again, going back that the workstation does not need to have Sage 300 installed. It just needs to be installed on the computer that's actually going to use it. So let's get into the executive dashboard. I'm going to close this out. So again, if you don't see it as a shortcut, you can access it from all programs in Sage. That's where the default is. And I'm actually going to open up the executive dashboard. So you have the ability to select the warehouse name. So if you set that up, through your gateway, you'll have the ability to enter it. Now I was a little lazy, so what I did was I set up two warehouses, so I can either pull the property, either one of those warehouses by typing that in or copy and pasting it in. So we're going to look at my first warehouse that I set up.
Hey, Jeff, a quick question is, how long does the replication take?
It can take the first replication can take. It's based on the size of your database, so that's the true answer. But the replication I did last night was about a half an hour. The first one, when you do the replication, may take you as much as an hour, but again, it really just depends on the size of your database. So I said I would set that accordingly. Yep. I'm sorry, Chris, I didn't hear the question.
It's okay. If it's about 3 gigs, you have an estimate.
I'm sorry, mine's not 3 gigs, so no. So I'd have to get back to we can get back to the user that asked that question.
Okay.
So this is the executive dashboard. So you're navigating around it. You have 4 default templates that come out of the box that are pre-built for you. You can actually set up a default home page by selecting, this is already my home one. But the next time I log in, I can make this one my home by making the selection, and you'll see the house, making that my home dashboard. I'm going to make the job profit. You have different options, and I'll go back and forth. One of the options that you have is the contrast. You can do a dark theme or a light theme, depending on your preference. And then you have the ability to turn on and off the parameters. So the parameters are designed to let you know how the report's being run, how the data is being pulled. Within those parameters, you can edit those parameters by, if you notice on the top, there's different options within each, in this case, within each quadrant. And I can edit those parameters. Again, I can have multiple companies. and I can run it by a specific job. And then I can use my dates accordingly. Let's see. And let's. So obviously that's not very good, but you have the ability to look at data at that snapshot. If you want to see how the report is designed, you can hit the question mark, and you can see how the template is designed. But you can drill down as I double click. And expand the view. Now, one thing to note when you drill down, you can go back and forth to a higher level. Back to dashboards. Off to the left, there's report templates that are, and again, where it is today, these are the default templates that will come with your dashboard. Obviously, they'll still be developing more, but where it is today. What this allows me to do is I can create my own dashboards with these templates. So if I wanted to create a new dashboard, create a new dashboard, come on. I want a new empty one. And so now I have an empty screen. And what this allows me to do is I can take these templates and drop and drag them into the empty space. You'll see a blue icon that just helps you position them. And the more templates that you bring in, you can position them accordingly to how you need to view the data. So this one's going to go to the left side. And it's refreshing. And maybe I want to grab my my job cost cash flow trend and put that to the upper left. And I can determine to make this my home page. So I'll save it. And I can make that my home. And I'm just drilling down on some more reports. And you have options in here that you can bring these out to different mediums other than whether it's printing, Excel. You have other ways to export that information. Let me just go back into PowerPoint. Let's getting into the executive dashboard. Let me actually show you to switch the warehouse. If I want to go to another warehouse, I can simply type it in, and now I'll be looking at a different data from another. Close this out. So this is my second data warehouse where I'm pulling this from. And as you can see, some of the dashboards won't apply, only to the data that it's pulling. So this is more for our property management clients. In closing, so that's the functionality of a Sage Executive Dashboard, of things that we can do, the different themes. You can select the dashboard, make new dashboards, even select some of the report templates. So in closing, so what did we learn today? Well, we learned what the executive dashboard is, what the requirements are, the purpose of the SQL Gateway, so that's your administration side, installation, and getting into this executive dashboard after it's installed. So any questions?
Is this application available for the project management module?
Currently today, I don't think the templates are there yet for the PMs. Let me go back to that. Let me go switch the warehouse. Take a look at that. Yeah, where it is today, there's no like submittal logs, or there's no RFI. Those logs are not here yet. It's mostly job, at this point, it's mostly job cost reporting.
Okay. Is the dashboard available now for installation?
Yes. They just need to make sure to verify their current Sage 300 version, but it is available.
Okay.
For those that are on 14, it's not a problem. But they would want to have their, if from an implementation standpoint, they would want to have at least their security defined.
Okay. Can you give an overview one more time of the requirements?
Sure. So You need Sage 300 version 13.1 revision 5 or higher. You'll need to download the Gateway administration tool and the executive dashboard and SQL Server. Now, when you download it, it comes with SQL Server Express, but you're going to have to take a look at the size of your database if it's more than 10 gig.
The next question is, we can alter templates. Is it possible to create one from scratch?
Not at this point, no.
Okay, it looks like that's all the questions we have for now. If you decide you have another question, you can always feel free to contact us afterwards. Jeff will put our contact information back on the screen. We will email out a copy of the presentation to everybody, and our information will be on that email as well. So we want to thank you all again for attending today's session, and have a great day.
Thank you again, everyone, for your time.